There are some places that never truly sleep, even when the fires have faded and the castle has fallen silent. Something remains awake. In Blackwood Castle, long after the last candle is extinguished, after the guards grow still and the wind settles against the stone, there is one man who continues his walk, the keeper of the hounds. Each night he counts them, one, then the next, always the same, always in silence, until one night he realized there were more footsteps than his own. And from that night onward, he no longer walked alone. The night had settled gently over Blackwood Castle, as though the world itself had chapsed to rest. Beyond the high stone walls, the forest lay in silence, its dark shapes unmoving beneath a sky veiled in thin cloud. The wind moved softly through the branches, not as a voice, but as a quiet presence, something that passed without needing to be seen. Inside the castle grounds, all was still. Windows were dark. Fires had faded to embers. Even the guards along the distant walls spoke in silence, their footsteps slow, their movements softened by the hour. Only one place remained awake, the kennels. At the far edge of the courtyard, where the stone gave way to packed earth and shadow, rows of wooden enclosures rested beneath a low shelter. The scent of straw and old timber lingered in the air, carried faintly by the night breeze. There, moving with quiet familiarity, was the keeper, Edric. He walked slowly between the kennels, a lantern hanging from his hand, its soft light swaying gently with each step. The glow did not reach far. It did not need to. It only marked his path, one step at a time. And hounds lay within their enclosures, large shapes barely visible in the dim light. Some rested with heads upon their paws. Others watched him pass, their eyes reflecting the lantern's glow, small, steady points of gold in the dark. No barking, no restless movement, only breathing, slow, steady, rhythmic. Edric paused beside the first kennel, resting his hand lightly against the wooden frame. He did not speak. He did not need to. The hounds knew his presence, just as he knew theirs. He moved on. Pause. The iron chains lay loose but ready, their faint metallic weight catching the light for only a moment, before fading again into shadow. Each one was fastened, each one in place. Edric checked them without thought. The motion practiced, repeated countless nights before. Routine had its own kind of comfort. At the end of the row, he stopped. For a moment, he listened. The wind passed along the stone wall, brushing softly against it. Somewhere far above, a loose shutter shifted, then settled again. The castle breathed slowly, deeply, as though asleep. Edric lowered the lantern slightly. The hounds were calm, all of them. He turned, walking back along the row, his steps falling into the same quiet rhythm. The light moved with him, sliding across wood and straw, touching each enclosure in turn, one, then the next, and the next, each hound just as it should be. Edric reached the final kennel and paused once more. Something held him there, not a sound, not a movement, just a feeling. He lifted the lantern a little higher. The light spread gently across the row behind him, catching the edges of the enclosures, the curves of resting bodies, the faint rise and fall of breathing. Everything was still. Everything was as it should be. And yet, for the briefest moment, as he stood in the quiet, Edric became aware of something else, a softness beneath the silence, a presence that did not belong to wind or stone or sleep. He listened. The hounds did not stir, the chains did not move, but there, beneath it all, another rhythm, soft, measured. like footsteps, following just behind his own. Edric remained still for a long moment. Then slowly, he lowered the lantern once more. The light dimmed, the shadows returned to their places. And without turning, without searching, he continued his round, just as he always had. Step, pause, step. The night held its silence, and the keeper walked on. The night deepened without notice. It did not arrive all at once, nor did it change the world in any sudden way. Instead, it settled gradually, like a breath drawn slowly and held. The castle remained quiet, its walls unmoving, its windows dark. Time passed, but gently. At the kennels, the lantern's glow had softened, its flame smaller now, steadier. Edric walked once more along the narrow path between the enclosures, his steps measured, his presence calm. Nothing in his movement was hurried, nothing needed to be. The hounds remained as they had been, still, watchful, resting. Their breathing rose and fell in quiet rhythm, a sound so soft it blended into the night itself. Now and then, one would shift slightly, the faint rustle of straw, marking the moment before stillness returned. Edric paused beside the first kennel. A large hound lay near the front, its head resting upon its paws, its eyes half closed. It did not move as he approached, only watched him with a calm, knowing gaze. He nodded, almost imperceptibly, then moved on. Step, pause, step. The lantern swayed, its light brushing gently across the wooden frames, the iron rings, the lengths of chain that lay coiled and quiet. Each chain caught the light for a moment, then released it again, returning to shadow. Everything was in its place, as it had always been. At the far end, Edric slowed. One of the hounds stood. It was not sudden, not restless. It rose slowly, as though waking from a deep and peaceful sleep. Its body remained still, its posture relaxed, but its gaze was fixed, not on Edric, beyond him. Into the darkness that lay between the kennels, Edric followed the direction of its gaze. There was nothing there, only shadow, only the soft reach of night, undisturbed and familiar. He waited for a moment. The hound did not move. Its ears were neither raised nor tense. Its breathing remained steady, and yet it did not look away. Edric lowered the lantern slightly, letting the light fall behind him. The darkness ahead deepened. Still nothing. After a while, the hound lay down once more, its head settling back onto its paws, its eyes closing slowly, as though whatever it had noticed no longer required attention. The moment passed. Edric remained still for a breath longer, then continued. Step, pause, step. He reached the final enclosure, and there, as always, he checked the chains, one by one. His hand moved with quiet certainty, touching each iron ring, each length of metal, feeling the weight, the position, the familiar presence of something secured. 1, 2, 3. The motion slowed. Edric's hand rested on an empty space. The chain lay there, coiled, untouched, the ring fixed firmly into the post, but there was no weight upon it, no hound resting beside it. He lifted the lantern. The light spread gently across the enclosure. Straw lay undisturbed, no marks, no signs of movement. The space was simply empty. Edric stood for a long moment, not alarmed, not searching, only still. He closed his eyes briefly, letting the quiet settle around him. There had been no sound, no disturbance, no breaking of routine, and yet there had been 12. There were always 12. His gaze moved slowly along the row. 1, 2, 3. Each hound rested as it should. 11. Edric lowered the lantern, The flame flickered once, then steadied again. Without hurry, without question, he placed his hand upon the empty chain and let it rest there for a moment, as though acknowledging something that required no answer. Then he turned away. Step, pause, step. Behind him, the kennels returned to stillness. The hounds breathed. The wind moved softly along the stone, and the empty chain lay quiet, as though it had always been so. Beyond the kennels, the castle grounds opened into shadow. The walls rose high and steady, their stone faces pale beneath the faint light of covered sky. Between them lay wide stretches of earth and worn pathways, shaped by years of quiet passage. Footsteps repeated so often they no longer needed to be seen. Edric moved along one of these paths. The lantern hung low at his side, its glow reaching only as far as his next step. The ground beneath his feet was firm, familiar, marked by routine rather than thought. Step, pause, step. Behind him, the kennels rested. Before him, the open yard stretched toward the outer wall, where the forest pressed close, its dark edges blending with the night. No guard walked this part at such an hour. No voices carried across the stone, only the wind, soft, steady passing. Edric followed the path as he always did, his pace unchanged, his breath even. The air held a quiet coolness, carrying the faint scent of earth and distant leaves. He did not look toward the forest. There was no need. He knew its presence as one knows the shape of a room in darkness. Without seeing, without searching, the lantern swayed gently. Light moved across the ground, stretching shadows, then drawing them back again. Small stones caught the glow, then faded as he passed. Nothing moved, nothing disturbed the night. At the edge of the yard, Edric stopped. The outer wall stood before him, tall and unbroken, its surface marked only by time. Beyond it, unseen but known, the forest lay waiting, quiet, endless. He listened, not for anything in particular, just listened. The wind touched the top of the wall, slipping through unseen spaces, carrying a sound that was almost not there. Leaves, perhaps, or branches shifting far away. It came and passed. Edric turned. The path behind him lay empty, the kennels now hidden in shadow. The castle stood still, its shape softened by darkness, its windows closed like sleeping eyes. Everything was as it should be. He began to walk back. Step, pause, step. A lantern followed. Light, shadow, light. His footsteps made no sound upon the earth, and yet, after a while, he noticed something, not ahead, not beside him, but just behind. A rhythm, soft, measured, almost in time with his own. Step, pause, step. Edric did not turn. The sound did not grow louder. It did not draw nearer. It simply remained, present. He continued walking, his pace unchanged, his breathing steady. The lantern did not waver. The light did not shift. Step, pause, step. Behind him, step, pause, step. The distance did not change. The rhythm did not falter. Edric reached the middle of the yard. The space widened here, the ground open, the walls farther apart. The sky above seemed slightly lighter, though no stars showed through the thin cloud. He slowed. The lantern stilled. The light settled. For a moment, there was only the wind, and then nothing. No second step, no quiet echo, only the night returned to itself. Edric stood in place, his gaze resting ahead, his posture unchanged. The silence felt complete. He waited, a long, quiet moment. Then another. Nothing followed. At last, He resumed his walk. Step, pause, step. This time, there was only one rhythm. The path led him back toward the kennels, their low shapes slowly returning to view as the lantern's light reached them once more, familiar, unchanged, waiting. The hounds remained within, their breathing steady, their forms still. Edric paused at the entrance, the lantern casting a soft glow across the wooden frames. He listened again. Only the wind. Only the quiet. He stepped inside. Behind him, the yard lay empty, the path undisturbed, and whatever had walked there, if anything had, left no mark at all. There were parts of Blackwood Castle that were no longer used, not abandoned, not forgotten, but simply left to rest. Places where footsteps had once passed, often, where voices had once lingered, but where time, slowly and without force, had drawn a quiet line between what was and what remained. The old tower stood at the far edge of the grounds, beyond the kennels, beyond the worn paths, where the earth grew softer and the stone walls met the outer boundary of the forest. Edric did not walk there, not as part of his rounds, not as part of anything, and yet it was always there. He could feel it, even without looking, a presence, not of movement, but of stillness. As he stood beside the kennels, the lantern held low, the light steady. His gaze moved, not directly, but just enough to catch the edge of it, a darker shape against the night, tall, narrow, rising just beyond the reach of the outer wall's shadow. The tower, its windows, were empty. No light had burned there in years. No voice had called from its height. The stones that formed it were older than the rest of the castle, worn smooth by time, their edges softened by seasons that had passed without count. It did not belong to the living parts of the castle. It remained separate. Edric turned away. There was no need to look. He resumed his round. Step, pause, step. The hounds lay quietly within their enclosures, their breathing slow, their bodies at ease. But as he moved along the row, something changed, not in the air, not in the wind, but propped in them. One hound lifted its head, then another, not suddenly, not in alarm, but with the quiet awareness, as though something had shifted just beyond what could be seen. Their eyes did not follow Edric. They turned, slowly, toward the far edge of the grounds, toward the tower. Edric paused. The lantern's light rested between the kennels, its glow soft, unmoving. The hounds did not bark. They did not grow restless. They only watched, still, steady, silent. Edric let his breath settle. He did not speak. There was no command to give. The moment stretched, thin, quiet. Then, as gently as it had begun, it passed. One by one, the hounds lowered their heads, their eyes closed, their breathing returned to its slow, familiar rhythm. The night resumed its place. Edric moved on. Step, pause, step. At the end of the row he stopped once more. The empty chain lay where it had been, coiled, untouched, waiting without purpose. He did not reach for it this time. He simply stood, listening. The wind moved along the stone walls, slipping through unseen spaces, brushing softly against the wood of the kennels. Farther out, beyond the walls, the forest shifted, faintly, like something turning in sleep. Edric lifted the lantern. The light spread outward, thin, limited, not reaching the tower, not touching it. And yet, for a moment, he felt as though something there had noticed, not movement, not sound, just awareness. He lowered the lantern again. The feeling faded. The night returned. Edric turned away from the kennels. His path took him toward the edge of the grounds once more, toward the open space where the tower stood just beyond sight. His steps did not change. Step, pause, step. The ground beneath him softened slightly, the packed earth giving way to a thinner layer of soil, cooler beneath his feet. The air shifted, carrying with it a faint scent of damp stone and something older, something that did not belong to the warmth of the kennels or the shelter of the walls. Edric stopped. The tower stood ahead, closer now, still, unlit, its doorway dark, its windows empty, its height disappearing into the night above. He did not approach. He did not need to. There was nothing there that called to him, nothing that required his presence. And yet, he listened. The wind did not touch the tower. The leaves beyond the wall did not stir near it. Even the quiet of the night seemed to pause just at its edge. Edric stood for a long moment. Then, slowly, he turned. Step, pause, step. He walked back toward the kennels, the lantern's glow returning to the familiar shapes, the wooden frames, the resting hounds. Behind him, the tower remained, unchanged, unseen, but not empty. As Edric reached the first kennel, one of the hounds stirred, not fully waking, not rising, just shifting, and from deep within its chest, low and steady, came a sound, a growl, soft, unfamiliar, and not meant for him. Edric paused. The lantern's flame flickered once, then steadied again. The hound fell silent. Its breathing slowed. Its body returned to rest. The night closed around them once more, still, quiet, unbroken. But somewhere beyond the reach of light, the night held its shape. Nothing changed. Quickly within Blackwood Castle, time did not move in sharp moments, but in slow, gentle layers, one passing into the next, without edge or urgency. The kennels rested in their quiet corner, just as they always had: wood, straw, iron, breath. Edric walked his path again. Step, pause, step. The lantern moved with him, its light soft and contained, never reaching far beyond his hands. It touched each enclosure in turn, then withdrew, leaving shadow to settle once more. The hounds remained calm. Their bodies rose and fell with slow, steady breathing. Some slept deeply. Others watched with half-lidded eyes, aware without concern. Nothing was disturbed. Nothing required attention. Edric paused beside the first kennel. He looked in. One hound, resting, as it should be. He moved on. Step, pause, step. The second, the third. Each one as it had always been, familiar, unchanged. But as he moved further along the row, something within the rhythm shifted, not in sound, not in movement, but in the quiet knowing of routine. He slowed. The lantern's glow drifted across the ground, catching the edges of straw, the curve of wood, the stillness of resting forms. And then, between one step and the next, he saw it, a shape, spanning, not within a kennel, not bound to chain or ring, but there, in the narrow space between the enclosures. Still, Edric stopped. The lantern hung at his side, the light low, not yet reaching the figure clearly. The hound did not move. It stood with a quiet presence, its body relaxed, its head level, neither raised nor lowered. It did not seem restless. It did not seem lost. It simply was. Edric lifted the lantern. The light moved slowly upward, touching the ground, then the hound's legs, then its body, dark fur, smooth, unmarked. Its shape was familiar, like the others, and yet not among them. The light reached its face. The hound looked at him, not with alertness, not with expectation, but with a calm, steady gaze, as though it had been there for a long time, and saw no reason to move. Edric remained still. He did not call. He did not step closer. There was no need. The hound did not belong to alarm. It did not belong to disturbance. It did not even belong to absence. It simply stood where no hound had been before. The chains lay quiet around them, each ring fixed in place, each length of iron resting without tension, none disturbed, none broken. Edric's gaze moved slowly to the empty chain at the end of the row, then back again. The hound did not follow his movement. It did not shift. Its breathing was slow, almost imperceptible. The night remained still. After a time, Edric lowered the lantern slightly. The light softened. Shadows returned to their places. The hound did not step forward, did not step away. It remained, present, but not pressing. Edric resumed his walk. Step, pause, step. He passed the hound without turning. The lantern's glow moved ahead of him, leaving the space behind in darkness once more. No sound followed, no movement, only the quiet rhythm of his steps. At the end of the row, he stopped again. The empty chain lay where it had been, coiled, untouched, waiting. He looked down at it, then closed his eyes for a brief moment, letting the stillness settle around him. When he opened them, nothing had changed. The wind moved softly along the walls. The hounds breathed. The night held its silence. Edric turned. Step, pause, step. He walked back along the row. The lantern lifted slightly. The light returned. And there, between the kennels, the hound was no longer there. The space lay empty, undisturbed, as though nothing had ever stood within it. Edric did not stop. He did not search. He continued his round, just as before. Step, pause, step. But as he reached the end once more, he became aware of something, not in front of him, not behind, but beside him. A quiet presence, keeping pace, moving as he moved, stopping as he stopped. He did not turn. The lantern did not shift. The night remained unchanged, and yet he was no longer walking alone. The night moved quietly around the castle, not with wind alone, not with shadow, but with something softer, something that did not disturb, yet did not pass unnoticed. At the kennels, the lantern burned low. Its flame was smaller now, steady and unhurried, casting a warm circle of light that barely reached the outer edges of the wooden frames. Beyond that circle, the darkness rested easily, undisturbed. Edric walked his path again. Step, pause, step. The hounds lay within their enclosures, their breathing slow, their bodies at ease. Nothing in their posture spoke of restlessness. Nothing in their eyes suggested fear. And yet, there was a change, subtle, almost not there. Edric slowed. The air felt different, not colder, not heavier, but altered. He drew a slow breath, and there, beneath the familiar scent of straw and wood, beneath the faint trace of iron and ash, was something else. Damp earth, faint, carried lightly, as though it had traveled far. Edric remained still for a moment, the lantern hanging quiet at his side. That scent did not belong within the walls. It belonged beyond them. To the forest, he lifted his gaze slightly, not toward any one place, but toward the space that held the night itself. The wind moved along the stone, soft, unbroken. It did not pass through the kennels. It did not cross the yard, and yet the scent remained. Edric walked on. Step, pause, step. He passed each enclosure slowly, his eyes resting on the hounds. One by one, they were awake, not rising, not moving, but watching, not him, not the light, but something beyond. Something that lay outside the rhythm of his steps. One hound shifted, lifting its head just enough to draw in the air. Its nose moved slightly, once, then stilled again. No growl followed, no bark, only awareness. Edric reached the end of the row. The empty chain lay where it had always been, its iron links resting in a loose coil, untouched, unmoved. He did not reach for it. Instead, he listened. The scent was stronger here, still faint, but certain. He turned. Slowly, the lantern lifted. The light moved outward, touching the ground, the edges of the kennels, the space between them, and then beyond, toward the yard, toward the walls, toward the darkness that lay between. Nothing moved. The ground remained smooth, undisturbed. No marks, no broken earth, no sign of passage. And yet, something had come. Edric stepped forward. Step, pause, step. The lantern swayed, its light shifting gently across the ground as he left the shelter of the kennels and moved into the open yard. The air felt cooler here. The scent lingered. He walked toward the outer wall. The forest lay beyond, unseen but present, its shape known without needing to be seen. The trees stood close, their branches interwoven, their shadows deep. A wall rose before him, unbroken, stone set firmly in place. No gate stood open, no passage showed. Edric stopped. He listened. The forest did not call. The wind did not carry anything more. The night held its silence, complete, untroubled. He lowered the lantern slightly. The light softened. The shadows deepened. If something had passed through, it had left nothing behind. No mark, no sound. Only the faint memory of its presence, carried in the air. Edric remained still for a moment longer. Then he turned. Step, pause, step. He walked back toward the kennels, the lantern's glow returning to its familiar place, the wooden frames rising once more from the darkness. The hounds had not moved. They lay as before, calm, steady, resting. But as Edric stepped beneath the shelter, one of them opened its eyes. Not fully, just enough. Its gaze followed him. Then, slowly, it shifted, not rising, not turning, but leaning, slightly, away from him, as though something stood between them. Edric did not stop. He continued his round. Step, pause, step. The lantern burned. The chains lay quiet. The night remained still, and yet, within the stillness, something lingered, not outside the walls, not within the forest, but here, where nothing had entered and nothing had left. The night remained unbroken. Nothing within Blackwood Castle called for attention. No voices rose. No footsteps echoed across the stone. The world held itself in a quiet balance, where nothing needed to change, and yet something had shifted, not in sound, not in sight, but in the gentle pull of awareness. Edric stood at the edge of kennels, the lantern low, its flame steady. The hounds rested behind him, their breathing slow, their bodies calm. The scent of the forest still lingered, faint, distant, but present. He turned, not toward the castle, not toward the yard, but toward the narrow space behind the kennels, where the ground gave way to shadow, and the light of the lantern reached only in fragments. There was no path there, not one that was used, not one that remained. And yet, the earth told a quieter story. Edric stepped forward. Step, pause, step. The ground softened beneath his feet, less worn, less certain. Small stones lay half buried, their edges smoothed by time. Grass pushed through in thin strands, pale in the lantern's glow. This was not a place of passing. It had been, once, but no longer. The kennels faded behind him. The wooden frames disappeared into darkness. Their familiar shapes were replaced by open space and stillness. The stone wall ran along his right, its surface cool and unmoving. To his left, the land fell gently toward the unseen forest. Edric moved slowly. The lantern's light shifted across the ground, revealing shapes not meant to be noticed. A line of stone, half buried, faint but deliberate. He paused. The stones were set in a row, spaced evenly, their pattern too careful to be random. They marked something that had once been clear, a path. Edric lowered the lantern slightly, letting the light fall closer to the ground. More stones appeared, worn, sunken, but still there. He followed them. Step, pause, step. The air grew cooler. The scent of earth deepened. The wind did not reach this place. The silence here felt different, not empty, but held, as though it had been waiting. The path curved gently, leading him away from the kennels, away from the castle, toward the far edge where the wall met the forest's shadow. Edric did not look back. There was no need. He knew where he had come from. He walked on. Step, pause, step. The lantern flickered once, briefly, then steadied again. The light stretched ahead, touching the ground, the stones, the faint shapes of something rising in the darkness. A structure, low, long, partially hidden by time. Edric slowed. The building stood just beyond the reach of the wall's shadow, its wood darkened with age, its roof sagging slightly where it had settled into years of silence. It was not part of the castle. Not anymore. And yet, it had been, once. He stepped closer. The lantern lifted. The light fell across the front of the structure, revealing a row of openings, evenly spaced, familiar in shape. Kennels, old, unused. The wood was worn, the edges softened, the doors either broken or missing entirely. Inside only darkness remained. No straw, no movement, no sound. Edric stood still. The air did not shift. The night did not move. This place had been left behind, not in haste, not in ruin, but in quiet forgetting. He stepped forward again. Step, pause, step. The ground here held no recent marks, no footprints, no signs of passage, only the faint memory of what had once been. Edric moved along the row slowly, the lantern's light touching each empty space, then moving on. One, then the next, and the next, each one silent, each one still. He stopped. The lantern lifted slightly, and there on the ground before one of the old kennels lay a chain, not rusted, not broken, but resting, as though it had been placed there with care. Edric looked at it. The iron caught the lantern's glow, dull but whole, untouched by time. He did not reach for it. He did not move. The silence deepened around him. And then, softly, behind him, he became aware of something, not a sound, not a step, but a presence, standing just beyond the light. He did not turn. The lantern remained steady, and the night held its breath, and the path, long forgotten, no longer felt empty. The old kennels did not welcome sound. They held it, softly, completely, as though anything that entered this place was asked to rest and remain. Edric stood where he was, the lantern low, its flame steady. The faint circle of light reached only a short distance, touching the worn wood, the empty spaces, the ground where no footprints remained. Behind him, something was there, not moving, not pressing, only present. He did not turn. There was no urgency in a moment, no need to disturb what had already settled into place. The air was still, cooler here, heavier, as though time itself had slowed, resting quietly among the old stones and wood. Edric drew a slow breath. The scent of damp earth lingered, deeper now, mixed with something older, something that did not belong to the living kennels behind him. He lifted the lantern slightly. The light moved forward, brushing across the interior of the nearest enclosure. Empty, the ground within, was bare, the straw long gone, the surface smooth, untouched. No marks, no bones, nothing to suggest what had once rested there. Only space. Edric stepped forward. Step, pause, step. The presence behind him remained, unchanged, keeping its distance. He moved along the row of old kennels, the lantern's glow passing from one opening to the next, revealing the same quiet emptiness. One, then the next, and the next. Each space held nothing. And yet, none of them felt abandoned. There was no sense of loss, no sense of ending, only waiting. Edric stopped. The lantern rested at his side. The flame flickered once, then stilled. He listened. At first, there was nothing, only the quiet, deep and steady, without movement. But as he remained there, without thought, without searching, he became aware of something else, a rhythm, soft, even. Not sound, exactly, but something close to it, like breathing, not his own, not close, but present, within the space. Edric did not turn, he did not follow it. He simply stood and listened. The rhythm continued, slow, steady, calm, as though the empty kennels were not empty at all, but filled with something. It did not require form. The lantern's light shifted slightly as his hand moved. A shadow stretched across the ground, and in that moment he noticed something. Shapes, not solid, not clear, but impressions, faint, like the memory of movement, along the ground. Within the enclosures, near the walls, low, quiet, still. He lowered the lantern. The light softened, the shapes faded, but the feeling remained. Edric took another step. Step, pause, step. The chain he had seen earlier lay ahead, still where it had been, undisturbed. He stopped beside it. The iron rested against the earth. Its links curved naturally, as though placed by a hand that knew its weight. He looked at it for a long moment. Then, slowly, he knelt, not to take it, not to move it, but simply to be closer. The lantern rested near the ground, its glow warm against the iron. The chain did not feel old. It did not feel forgotten. It felt present, as though it belonged, not to the past, but to something that continued, quietly, without being seen. Edric remained there, still, the silence settling around him like a gentle weight. And then, behind him, the presence shifted, not a step, not a sound, but closer, just enough to be known. Edric closed his eyes briefly, not in fear, not in uncertainty, but in acknowledgement. When he opened them, nothing had changed. The kennels remained empty. The chain lay still. The night held its quiet. He rose slowly. The lantern lifted. The light moved once more across the ground, across the empty spaces, across the quiet shapes that were no longer there. He turned. Step, pause, step. This time he did not walk alone. The presence followed, not behind, not ahead, but beside him, keeping pace, silent, steady, patient, as though it had always been there, waiting for him to arrive. The path back did not feel the same, not because it had changed, not because the ground beneath his feet was different, but because something now moved beside him. Edric walked slowly along the forgotten stones. Step, pause, step. The lantern swayed gently. its light brushing the ground ahead, revealing the faint line of the path, the soft rise of earth, the quiet shapes of stone set long ago. Beside him, something kept pace, not seen, not heard, but present. It did not press close. It did not drift away. It remained exactly where it needed to be. Edric did not turn. There was no need. The presence did not belong to surprise. It did not belong to disturbance. It moved with the same calm rhythm as his own steps, as though it had walked this path many times before. The old kennels faded behind him. The scent of damp earth lingered, then softened, replaced once more by the familiar trace of wood and straw carried faintly from the living kennels ahead. Step, pause, step. The castle walls rose slowly into view, their stone surfaces pale against the night, steady and unchanged. The path widened, the ground grew firmer, the familiar returned. And yet, something remained. Edric stepped beneath the shelter of the kennels. The lantern's light settled once more among the wooden frames, touching each enclosure, each quiet form, each resting hound. Nothing had changed. They lay as before, calm, still, breathing a slow, steady rhythm. But as Edric moved along the row, one hound opened its eyes, then another, not rising, not moving, only watching, not him, but the space beside him. Edric paused. The lantern hung still. The light rested gently across the ground. The hounds remained quiet, their gazes steady, calm, untroubled, as though what stood beside him was not unfamiliar, not unwelcome, but known, accepted. He moved on. Step, pause, step. The presence followed, not stepping, not shifting, only remaining, as though the space it occupied moved with him, never separate, never apart. At the end of the row, Edric stopped. The empty chain lay where it had always been, coiled, untouched, waiting. He lifted the lantern slightly. The light spread across the ground, across the iron, across the quiet space beside him. For a moment, nothing changed, and then, very slowly, something appeared. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. A shape, low, resting, where nothing had been before. Edric did not move. The lantern remained steady in his hand. The light held its place. The shape remained. A hound, lying where the empty chain rested. Its form was soft, not solid, like a shadow that had chosen to remain. Its body still, its breathing slow, almost not there, and yet present. Edric lowered the lantern slightly. The light dimmed. The shape softened, but did not disappear. He stood for a long moment, simply watching. There was no fear, no question, only understanding. This place had not been empty. It had been waiting. He turned. Step, pause, step. He walked along the row once more. The hounds lay quietly, their breathing steady, their bodies at ease. None showed alarm, none turned away. They had already accepted what had returned. At the far end, Edric stopped again. He closed his eyes briefly, letting the night settle around him, letting the quiet hold its shape. When he opened them, nothing had changed. The lantern burned. The hounds rested. The empty chain lay coiled upon the ground, but the presence remained, not unseen now, not entirely. It moved beside him, calm, steady, as though it had never left, as though it had always belonged to this place, to this path, to him. Edric turned slowly, not to face it, but to walk. Step, pause, step, and beside him, the hound that had not been counted walked with him. Once more, the night settled into its final stillness. Nothing within Blackwood Castle stirred beyond what was needed. The walls held their silence. The towers rested beneath the dim sky. Even the wind had softened, moving lightly along the stone, as though careful not to disturb what had already come to rest. At the kennels, the lantern burned low. Its flame was small now, steady, untroubled. Edric walked his path. Step, pause, step. The rhythm remained. It had not changed. It did not need to. The hounds lay within their enclosures, their breathing slow and even. Some slept deeply, their bodies at ease. Others watched quietly, their eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lantern. There was no restlessness, no unease, only the quiet presence of the night and those who belonged within it. Edric moved along the row, his steps measured, his gaze steady. One, then the next, and the next, each hound as it should be, nothing missing, nothing disturbed, and yet he was not alone. Beside him, keeping pace with each step, was the presence he no longer needed to question. It did not hide, it did not reveal itself fully. It simply remained, calm, steady, certain. Step, pause, step. The lantern's light shifted gently across the ground, brushing against the empty space at the end of the row. But it was no longer empty. The chain lay coiled as before, but now it did not feel unused. It rested as something that belonged. Edric paused beside it. The lantern lowered slightly. The light settled. And there, just within its reach, the faint outline of the hound remained, not fully seen, not fully hidden. Its form was soft, like shadow touched by light, resting where it had always meant to be. Edric did not reach for it. He did not call. There was no need. The hound lifted its head, slowly, calmly. Its gaze met his. There was no command in it, no expectation, only recognition. Edric stood for a moment, letting the quiet pass between them. Then he turned. Step, pause, step. The hound rose, not with sound, not with movement that could be seen, but with presence. And it followed, not behind, not ahead, but beside him. They walked the length of the kennels together. The lantern swayed gently, its light moving across wood and straw, across iron and shadow, touching each enclosure in turn. The hounds remained calm. They did not watch with curiosity. They did not stir, as though they had always known that something would return. At the edge of the kennels, Edric stopped. The yard lay beyond, wide and still. The outer wall stood firm. The forest rested in silence. The tower remained in shadow. Everything in its place, everything at rest. He listened. The wind moved softly. The castle breathed. And beside him, there was another rhythm, soft, steady, unchanging, not separate from his own, but moving with it. Edric lowered the lantern. The light dimmed. The shadows deepened. The night closed gently around them. There was nothing more to see, nothing more to follow, only the quiet and the slow passing of time. He turned once more. Step, pause, step. The path continued. The same as it had always been, the same as it would remain. And as he walked, he no longer listened for what might follow. He no longer counted what was there, or what was not. The night did not require such things. The kennels rested, the castle slept, the forest waited, and the keeper walked his path, as he always had. Step, pause, step. But now the rhythm was shared, soft, steady, unbroken, and within that quiet, gentle and complete, nothing was missing, nothing was alone, and everything was at rest.